Why super empaths keep attracting avoidance. There's an uncomfortable truth about relationships that most people don't realize until they've lived through it. Super empaths are like magnets for avoidant partners, and the reason isn't because they're weak, desperate, or too needy. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Super empaths are some of the strongest and most intuitive people you'll ever meet. They're deeply sensitive, with an emotional radar so sharp that they can pick up on feelings others can't even put into words. They carry a warmth, a presence, an energy that makes people feel safe, understood, and accepted in ways they've never experienced before. Now imagine what happens when that kind of energy meets someone who has spent their entire life hiding behind emotional walls. Avoidants crave connection, but they're also terrified of it. They walk through life armored up, scared of being hurt, yet longing to be loved. When a super empath enters their world, radiating acceptance and compassion, something inside the avoidant begins to tremble. It's like someone is finally knocking on the door of their soul, and for the first time, they're tempted to open it. But here's where it gets complicated. This pull between empaths and avoidants isn't always healthy. In fact, it often feels like two puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly, but in a way that traps them both. The empath feels drawn to the avoidant's hidden depths, while the avoidant feels soothed by the empath's patience and love. But underneath that attraction is a cycle of pursuit, withdrawal, and heartbreak that can leave both people drained and confused. Let's look deeper into why this happens. Super empaths are naturally drawn to emotional depth. On the surface, avoidants may look detached, distant, even uninterested. But underneath that exterior lies a heart that feels everything, though often in silence. The empath senses this. They can feel the pain, the childhood wounds, the love buried beneath the fear of intimacy. And instead of pulling away from that complexity, they lean in. For the empath, it feels almost like a mission, a calling, to help the avoidant heal, to unlock their heart, to love them into safety. Avoidants, on the other hand, are deeply affected by this. For them, being pursued by an empath feels both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because the love feels unconditional. Terrifying because closeness awakens their deepest fear, losing control, being engulfed, or being hurt all over again. So they swing back and forth, pulled in by the empath's warmth, and then retreating the moment it feels too close. And this is what creates the magnetic push-pull that neither fully understands. But the truth is, this isn't just about chemistry or attraction. This bond runs far deeper. It's a subconscious dance rooted in childhood wounds. Many super empaths grew up in environments where they had to anticipate the emotions of others to feel safe. Maybe they had a parent who was unpredictable, emotionally absent, or even volatile. So as children, they learned to tune in, to overgive, to carry responsibility for everyone else's feelings. That survival skill became a superpower in adulthood, making them compassionate, intuitive, and deeply loving. But it also left them vulnerable to relationships where their own needs are pushed aside. Avoidants often come from the opposite background. Many grew up with caregivers who discouraged vulnerability or dismissed their emotional needs. Some were punished for showing feelings, while others were simply ignored. As a result, they learned to shut down, to rely only on themselves, to believe that opening up equals danger. Their survival strategy was independence at all costs, even if it meant loneliness. So when a super empath and an avoidant meet, it feels strangely familiar to both. The empath instinctively moves in to heal the avoidant's wounds, while the avoidant simultaneously feels comforted by the empath's presence, yet overwhelmed by their intensity. It's not just attraction, it's a replay of childhood patterns. The empath feels at home taking care of someone emotionally unavailable, while the avoidant feels safe being pursued without the pressure of having to fully open up. This is why the bond between them feels so unbreakable. The empath radiates an authenticity that slips past the avoidant's defenses. Avoidants aren't heartless, they feel deeply, but those feelings frighten them. When they meet an empath who sees their soul and doesn't run away, it feels like both a blessing and a threat. That's why avoidants often start strong, showering affection, passion, and attention, only to disappear or pull back suddenly. The empath is left questioning, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, they didn't do anything wrong at all. They simply touched a part of the avoidant that has been locked away for years. And here's where the empath's heartbreak begins. Empaths pour out love. They stay patient, they nurture, they believe if they just give a little more, if they just love a little harder, they'll finally reach the avoidant's heart. But the harder they try, the more the avoidant retreats. It becomes emotional quicksand. The empath keeps giving, but instead of progress, they only sink deeper. The avoidant feels suffocated, the empath feels rejected, and yet both stay hooked because the pattern feels intoxicatingly familiar. This dynamic is so powerful because it's not just love, it's survival instincts colliding. The empath confuses emotional intensity with intimacy. The highs and lows of the avoidant's pullback and return feel like passion, but in reality, it's a trauma bond. The avoidant, meanwhile, confuses the empath's unconditional love with safety, but also fears that same love because it forces them to confront emotions they've spent years burying. What makes it even harder is the deep understanding empaths have. They don't just love avoidance, they see them. They see the pain, the fear, the child inside who just wanted love. And that kind of understanding creates a connection that feels impossible to walk away from, even when the relationship turns toxic. The empath convinces themselves that with just a little more effort, a little more love, they'll finally unlock the avoidant's heart. But here's the truth. Nothing changes until the avoidant chooses to heal themselves. And this is where the greatest lesson for super empaths comes in. Their empathy is sacred. Their light is sacred. But sacred doesn't mean it should be poured endlessly into people who can't hold it. Empathy was never meant to be used as a lifeline for others while drowning themselves. The moment an empath realizes that their gift isn't about fixing others, but about choosing wisely where their energy flows, the story changes. Avoidants are capable of love. They can grow, they can heal, they can open up, but only when they're ready and willing to face their own wounds. And empaths need to heal the wound inside themselves that whispers they must earn love by rescuing others. When empaths stop chasing, when they stop trying to prove their worth by overgiving, everything shifts. Their light stops being a magnet for broken love. Instead, it becomes a beacon that draws in those who can meet their depth, who can stand in the fire of intimacy without running away. In the end, super empaths attract avoidants because their love is powerful enough to reach even the darkest corners of someone's heart. But that same power must be protected. The true transformation happens when an empath learns that their empathy isn't just for others, it's for themselves too. When they protect their energy, they stop replaying old wounds and start writing a new story. A story where their gift becomes truly transformative, not because it heals the unwilling, but because it attracts those who are ready to love them back fully.